just going to. Hello, everyone. What does Jeff say? We bring the big names and we have the big fun. Jeff always does these introductions, so I've messed it up already. We have a bit of an exciting session for you guys tonight. We have a valuer on, and an incredible valuer at that, Belinda, Botzolis. Sorry about that, Belinda. And we also have special co-host Steve Polisi. We are going to be covering a whole heap of stuff. We're going to be talking about granny flats and dual incomes. We're going to start talking about one of the things as well is like granny flats, do they kill capital appreciation, right? That you spend $200,000, $300,000 on a granny flat. Is that the best thing? We're also going to cover off what actually adds value in a valuer's eyes. And we'll cover off a whole heap of topics because that's one of the things I talk about all the time, Belinda, is like when you buy a property, you're not trying to make it to attract to sellers. You're trying to be attractive to valuers. So what are the little X factor things that we can do? And then also how to tailor your property's value to the demographic that you've got. So anyway, I've been talking too much. Okay, Belinda's got a ghost. How are you, Belinda? Nice to meet you.
My little dog just walked in.
Oh,
He just walked straight back out. I'm going to close the door just a second.
Okay. How are you, Steve? You're back in Sydney now?
I'm back in Sydney after 2 months in Europe, so good to be back. I was getting sick of the 4 a.m. wake-ups, but daughter is not sleeping with jet lag, so that's always fun.
Belinda.
You'll get there, Joe. You'll get there, Joe. You've got an English partner as well. You're stuck going to England every year.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. It's I've got, I live, my family is in the Blue Mountains, so she has to suffer through 2 hours of driving. I have to suffer through 48 hours of plane trips to see the family. So it's great. I'm looking forward to it. Belinda, mate, thank you for jumping on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. How are you?
I haven't shared anything yet. I don't have a ghost. I have a dog. So that's the only wisdom I've shared so far. I'm well, thank you. I'm very well.
Good. Well, we actually, you've actually already had podcasts with Steve Polisi, and
way back.
Really? Back? Oh, okay, a couple of months back. Well,
I think I started talking to socials, Joe, and started messaging her on there.
Well, we actually met at another podcast, Belinda. I was finishing on a podcast, and then you were leaving, and the host, Aaron Christie David, was like, "You guys need to have a chat. You guys are going to get along, and you're going to." So far, we've gotten along pretty well, but I'm keen to unpack the knowledge that you have. But who is Belinda Botzolis? Is that how I pronounce your name correctly? So I'm not messing it up.
Botzolis. It's Greek. So
it's Botzolis.
Greek.
Okay. So who is Belinda? Well, Belinda, you've got 15 plus years as a property valuer. So you've got your own property value business called Add Valuer. And your kind of specialized skill is all about low cost upgrades of how to boost equity for people, how to focus on dual incomes, and what valuers actually look out for. You do a whole heap in the property space. So that's a bit of an introduction to you. But the first question we always like to ask is, how did you get into property investing?
I've been valuing 20 years. I know I look like I've been valuing 15. It looks great. But I just told Steve in our podcast I started valuing when I was 12. So that's 20 years later. So basically straight from high school to uni, the degree up there, and then straight from uni to valuing as a residential mortgage valuer, essentially. So I've only ever known valuation. I'm also a registered tax agent. That came into play about 10 years ago. And I guess I got into it because I loved property. I liked sales, I liked property, I liked business, I liked economics. My degree just encompassed all that basically. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, property economics, that sounds cool. And the rest is history. So valuing is not just valuing for the banks. There's a lot to it. And I think I've been trying to do a good job of spreading awareness of what valuers are doing, much more than just all that bank work. So And doing podcasts like this where people can actually ask real questions. There's so many, like, oh, if you go with this bank, you get a lower valuation. If you get refinanced with another bank, it will be slightly higher if it's a desktop versus in person, all these things. And I'm like, just ask a valuer, they'll tell you. And there's a lot of kind of Chinese whispers around all that. So that's why I'm here tonight. So you can ask me all the juicy questions.
On a bit of a side note, Joe and people watching, follow her socials. Your socials, Belinda, are unreal. Like, she's got a huge like Instagram, TikTok following, but it just gives lots of little cool little nuggets. So worth following there. Back when you became a valuer though, Belinda, like, it wasn't a normal thing for females to choose valuation. Like, I've met a lot of valuers and most of them are old men in slacks.
Men in with clipboards and pockets with pens and calculators. Yeah. So when I was, 22, 23, knocking on the door going, hi, I'm the valuer, they're looking over your shoulder going, no, seriously, like, where's the valuer? Like, who else is here? And I was like, no, it's just me, I'm here. So yeah, there wasn't it was I guess a very male dominated industry. I didn't really care, couldn't care less if I worked with men or women. I liked working predominantly with I guess men in general, because I don't know, I just felt like it was like, just get on with business. I've worked with women, sometimes you can get a little, I don't know, not catty, but there's a bit of drama in the office. I don't know, I just got on with it. And I never saw myself as a female working with men. I just saw myself as a valuer working with other valuers. And that's just how I always saw it. My course was predominantly guys. I just worked and studied with them. I had a brother, I had boy cousins. I was like one of the boys growing up. I was a bit of a tomboy. So I don't know, just fit right in, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's just, I remember like even when I started investing 10 years ago, like even investing was a male dominated thing. But now I've slowly seen over those 10 years, like it went from like 90-10 to now it's probably 60-40 at a thumb suck.
I'd say that. I reckon there's a lot more women on the sidelines wanting to get in, and men are just by nature a little bit more ballsy, like I think it was a statistic, like women outgrow men because men take more risks, like they do stuff that maybe women don't, and investing might be a little bit daunting, and I think that stigma is breaking. I think a lot of women are doing great stuff in that space. So yeah, I think it will continue to increase the ratio, or even out, or
because I think there's a lot more education out there for people to feel comfortable in taking the risk. But also the female investors that we've had on this show have been absolute weapons because they take calculated risks. And there's a little bit more, like we had Jane Slack-Smith on, I think it was, talking about this exact topic of like women investors have done so much better than the men because they weren't taking crazy, stupid bets. They were doing like more strategic approach and just not saying, oh, I better buy it. Let's just go buy something, rather than blind action. They took a step back, did some analysis, and then it worked. The problem is when you take too much analysis and you don't end up taking action on it. But if you can take that action and do the analysis and pull the trigger, you make it happen. So from valuation, that's what I'm kind of interested. Can you, like, what is a valuer? Because I'm sure there's heaps of people that are like, oh yeah, the valuer, I do the bank thing and the bank, they send a valuer out. Like, can you just give us a high level snapshot of what is a valuer? How does it work? And how should we think about it as an investor?
Yeah, essentially the role of the valuer is to ascertain the market value of the property at an arm's length transaction, with both parties acting prudently, without duress, and coming to the determination of a willing buyer and a willing seller. Where would they in the open market determine the value of that property? And I always say this, a valuer doesn't come up with the value of the property. The agent doesn't. The market are just the human beings. And I guess what the valuer is trying to do is figure out, what are the people in the market going to pay for this home if this home was to come onto the market? So when the valuation can differ, it really depends on the purpose of that valuation. So when we get instructions from the bank, which I'd say 9 out of 10 people would associate a value with a bank valuer, the bank is being instructed by the bank to try and ascertain what that property's worth and also identify any risks associated with that property. So it's much more than what can that property sell. We know it can probably sell more come auction day, but we value it at the date of inspection, the way it's presented. Is there anything that the bank should know about? And it gets so personal because it's your home and you live in it, but we haven't been instructed by you. You haven't, even though technically you paid for the report with the bank's paying us. So our due diligence and our duty of care is to the bank. And our job is to work out, it's almost like worst case scenario, what the home will get. We can guarantee, we can sign our name on it. And we're basically saying, sue us if we get this wrong, but we guarantee it's worth this. And I think that's really hard to get an agent to commit to the same level of opinion as a valuer to say, I know you think my home's worth $1 million, but could you sign a document stating that? And if I don't get $1 million at auction, can I sue you for the difference if I rely on this? And I bet you an agent will change their tune pretty quickly, where every time a valuer signs a document, that's essentially what they're saying. We guarantee this is what the home's worth. If we're wrong, you can sue us and we'll see you in court. So
that was basically my question. I was going to say you typically have to take a more conservative approach with the lenders because, like as we've spoken about before, like it's a high chance you get sued if you get it wrong. So you're always going to be a cautious one. And then the person who owns a property always thinks it's worth more than it actually is anyway, because they've chosen the one property that sold for more. That's a little bit nice, being like, oh yeah, mine should be worth $750 if that sold for $850.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Steve, is you've got it, and I try to remind people of this. Say I go through a home today, I'm going to value it on its condition today, but you would never sell your home the way it presents right now, even if it's a nice home. You might like give it another coat of paint, cut the grass, add a little bit more mulch. You might get designer furniture. You might, change a few things, spend a week or two like getting it ready for sale, and that's going to increase the marketability of the home and then value it. I mean, it'll be worth more. But when a valuer comes in, they come in warts and all as at the date of inspection. Okay, so whenever you put your home for sale, it's like your wedding day. Like, okay, I did my hair and makeup today, but if I was getting married, I'd be putting like fake lashes on. I'd be doing my hair. I'd got a veil, a nice dress. It's your wedding day is the wedding day for your house on the auction day. So it's the same equivalent, and it's going to be worth more because it's presented a bit better. And that's, I guess, we know it's going to sell more because it's going to present better, but we just got to work out. It's almost like worst case scenario what your home's worth, because the bank's going to lend money on it. So that's where it gets a bit.
So we should start for a valuer. We should style our property so when the valuer comes in, they see it like at its best. Or are you saying, when you go to it, it's very prettied up. We can't sell it at pretty. We have to sell it at, let's remove all the fake eyelashes and done up hair. It's we have to sell it at what it is in reality.
When you go vacant possession, like we're technically trained to see past all the furniture, but people in the market are not, and they will pay more for something that the valuer's like. At the end of the day, you're not buying the furniture, you're not buying the nice stuff, you're buying it on a vacant possession. So, and it's true when you look at it this way. You say you got a beautiful home, but you got tenants in it, and they just have pretty basic furniture. The valuer's not going to value it less because the tenant doesn't have the nicest furniture, versus a pretty average home that's got beautiful furniture in it. They're not necessarily going to value it high because the furniture is nice. It does go down to the improvements. I guess my point is, when it does go for sale, it is dressed for sale. It is advertised for sale. It depends on the day, how the market responds. So it can always get more, is my point, but a valuer doesn't hang their hat on a valuation on it could get more. It could. It's what it can guarantee. What we believe, given the sales evidence in the market, that's what we believe the property will get.
What are some of the common misconceptions as investors need to be thinking about when it comes to valuations?
I was going to say, Joe, one of the funny things I always experience is when people go, oh, the valuer underquoted my price, but then they'll go choose the best agent. They go, I'm going to choose this agent because he's the best at selling. I'm like, so there is a variance in price based on selling, because if you're saying the agent can change the price, why is the valuer got to be fixed?
Very true. Yeah, yeah. That's such a good point. I'm actually going through the process of selling a property in my PPOR right now, and just agents coming. It's so very interesting to be on the other side of buying, and just agents being like, yeah, we'll easily get you X amount of dollars. I'm like, there is zero chance in hell that you're going to get X dollars. Like, they just overquote so much. And then all of them, every single agent that's come in have said, oh yeah, this is the best place ever. There's some downsides, but this is going to be so good. I guess as a valuer, you just see through all of that nonsense and just go straight to the point. But yeah, what are some of the misconceptions that as investors see out there, and we're like, oh, duh, guys, just chill out on, that's not what a valuer is or does or will add value to your property.
Yes, and I know, Steve, we spoke about this. The market's been up the last 5 years, Joe, and we've seen some pretty crappy properties getting some pretty decent money. And for an investor that's been new to the game, say just as the pandemic hit, this has been about 5 on to 6 years now since that start of COVID, where the market has just really taken off. So if you've started investing there, you only know good times, you only know the market up, and you can only know that even if you bought a pretty crappy property, it's just gone up. The property hasn't done any of the heavy lifting. It's the market that's done all the work, regardless of the home. What the misconception is that you can, as an investor, you can just buy whatever property you want and it'll go up. And then you hear a lot of, YouTube videos and social media people say stuff like, oh, buy this property and then in a year's time, the value goes up, pull out equity and go again, and the value will go up, pull out equity and go again. Not all property performs the same long term. You might get this increase in value early on. My point is, homes that are compromised in some way, maybe they're located on a main road, maybe they're located in front of a bus stop or backing onto a train station or a highway. These homes, they sell when there's no stock on the market and there's a really strong demand. But if that swaps and we have a low demand and lots of stock on the market, they're the homes that sit there for ages and get discounted and then nobody wants them. And it's not that you will get your value, but it takes a while to sell. And what I see is that people, they don't really look at the whole picture of the property. They just sort of see the price tag, and they tend to overlook a lot of the fundamentals that, as a valuer, you might not put a hell of a lot of weight on a discounted value because it's on a main road or it's on a corner with, next to an industrial estate. But the valuer weighs heavily on this because they warn the bank and they say, look, it's okay now. Buying off the plan, you're a 2-bedroom unit in and amongst 500 other 2-bedroom units, all in your kind of, vicinity of the tower. It's going to sell now because there are not many properties on the market. But if the economy goes down and all these 2-bedroom units flood the market, your one's going to sit there for ages. So we have to warn the bank about these things. And I see a lot of investors, a lot of people discount warnings or red flags that valuer would heighten to the bank, and they just dismiss it and will pay a price that is just under a much, much better property because they're just trying to get into the market. And it might go back to what we were saying about, just, oh, it's cheap, let's just buy it. It's like, don't just buy it because it's cheap or it's a little bit, compromised and it's fine. It's fine now, but if the market changes, it can really affect the value of the property. So I'd say if you're looking at a property, look at the whole picture. Look at the whole picture and then make sure you weigh the good and the bad, not just, oh, it's cheap, don't worry about, who cares about the main road? The tenants won't care about the tenancy, just put the tenant in it and just get the rental package.
What are some of those fundamentals? So you've mentioned a couple, like a main road is a big detractor. So having a bus stop out the front is another one. What are some of the core fundamental? You walk into a house, or you drive up to a place. What are you looking for that's going to say, heck, yeah, steer clear. We don't like this as a valuer.
Say if it's a sloping block, that turns a lot of people off. Yes, some people don't like the slope down because of water. goes into a home. A steep driveway, you got to park a car, especially if it's a family area. You've got elderly people, coming to visit. People think about this. I've got Nan and Pop coming to visit. They won't be able to walk up these stairs. Upside down houses are usually quite problematic. And that's where instead of having a kitchen, living, dining downstairs, it's a 2-story home and the kitchen, living, dining is upstairs. That works fine if you're upstairs for a reason. Like you've got a lovely view, there's an outlook, there's a purpose for being upstairs. But a lot of the times it feels like apartment living because you don't have the access to the outside like you would in a normal home. And, some people in the market will go, oh, I don't want to go upstairs every time I've got to come home just to go to the living or the kitchen. I'd rather just have a regular single level home or a 2-level home with the bedrooms upstairs. So there are certain things in a home, outside of the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, the allotment. Some people are hell bent on, I'm not buying a home unless it's a north facing or some sort of, aspect where I get lots of sunlight. That could be a deal breaker. That's got nothing to do with the location. It's all got to do with the land and the property. So these things that you're like, oh, I'll just buy it because it's the only house in my price range in this area. Market won't worry too much now, but down the track it could be problematic.
So what about like odd shaped blocks? Are they a big from a valuer's eyes? So we've got like slopey block, bad, main road, bus stop out the front, upstairs, downstairs. What any other kind of deal things that we need to think of? Because this is gold for any property investor that's out there in the market. That's like, okay, cool. I've got one property here that's 500,000. I've got one here that's 500,000. How do I make the decision? And these little things are like great way to make the choice. Anything else that you can think of?
Could be irregular blocks. If it's irregular and unusable, but it's a big block, don't get caught up on like, oh, it's 800 square meters. It's like, yeah, it's 800 square meters, but you can't use 200 of it because it's, an awkward shape, or it's like you get some homes. I've gone into plenty where, true story time. I had a house and it was 3,500 square meters waterfront. And it was the biggest block in this particular suburb. And it was level. Already it was a battle axe. Battle axe is another one that we, as a value, we flagged to the bank as a risk rating, battle axe property, because not everyone in the market wants a battle axe, right? And it was a battle axe already. So it already had, and it was 3,500, and it kept going, it's the biggest block, it's worth the most. And I was like, okay, calm down. Only 1,000 square meters is level, and then you're like this to the water. And I'm like, you can't do anything. You can't build. And if you did build, what are you going to, the cost of construction on a site like that is going to be through the roof. No one's going to want to touch it. You're going to overcapitalize. You're going to spend $3 million to build on this waterfront site, and the home's only going to be worth $3 million. So it's about understanding, just because you have a big block doesn't always mean it's going to add value if you can't use the land. If that was a level 3,000 square meter block to the water, he would have had dollar signs coming out of his ears. But it's an unusable site. I think it had like a bushfire overlay, and the bottom had like a flood overlay as well. So
you look at those things as well. Like you see the easements, you see
everything. Yeah. But we if you're doing a bank val, we don't search the title unless we're asked. Yep. So we value every property on the assumption that it's a good title. Okay.
Which means like
no the title is clean. No encumbrances, no caveats, no covenants, nothing like that. If we do get a copy of it, we don't investigate them further. A lot of the time we just say, hey, there's a caveat here, or there's a covenant, there's an easement. It's going to affect the value. We suggest you look into this further. But yeah, a clean title is always the assumption when we're doing a valuation. But we do look at overlays on the bushfire floods. What else do we look at? Airplane. Like if you're near an airport and you're in a flight path zone, that affects the property as well. And just anything, things like that.
It's funny. I used to not consider all the stuff like stairs, sloping blocks, drop-offs and stuff until you have a toddler. And now every property I look at, like we live on a cliff face. So I got to go up 3 sets of stairs to get my view. And then our back courtyard has like a big meter drop off retaining wall. And all this stuff, it's just carnage because it's like toddler wants to walk down the steps, toddler falls off the retaining wall, toddler climbs on the balcony. All these things I start thinking of now. Same reason I wouldn't want a main road. If they run out, main road, like you want a quieter street.
Yeah.
So all that stuff I used to not think about. Now I'm like, but one of the points I want to touch on is, like, I started investing in 2012, and I used to be one of those people that said, oh, don't worry about the main roads as that much, because like if it's 500 for a main road one and 550 for a non-main road one, when they go to $1 million, you'll probably get 1.1. Yes. So I'm like, oh, who cares? But like you said, young people like me and Joe haven't lived through the dark times. Like if you've only been investing the last 10, 12 years, everything's went generally up. And I think the point I want to touch on that you said is when it's the seller's market, buyer's market, they're the ones that are going to linger and the price disparity will get bigger.
Yeah. And it's also harder to get tenants. Like when the vacancy rates are at 3-4%, you're going to be the last one to be rented because no one wants to have their kids on a main road. And the noise, like how annoying.
The noise.
The noise.
The noise is a big one. That's what we're flagging actually. We're flagging it's pollution. People don't like because that, pollution, the noise. So I always do this with my fingers. I'm like, if each finger represents 10% of the market, it's on a main road, whooshka, 40% of the market straight away aren't showing up to your property. They're sitting there on their phone on like a Saturday and they're going, oh, that's nice. And they, have a look and they're like, oh, it's on a main road. I'm not going to turn up. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on a main road. It looks like it's sloping. It's, it's an upside down house. It's not north facing. I'm out. So all of a sudden your market's down to 30%. And you'll find someone to buy it. That's not a problem. But when the market is down, that's where it can be a little bit problematic. Now, I'm not saying it's going to bother you because if the market's down, you're not going to sell. But if that's a point in time and it's a bit of a delayed softening in the market for a period of time and you want to pull out some equity, you're going to struggle with a strong valuation of your property, and you find that it would have come down a little bit. So these are things. I mean, I'm not saying don't buy one, but go in calculated. Yeah, go in and understand that, okay, I really, really want this suburb because like Steve said, whether it's $1 million or 1.2, the market's going to do all the heavy lifting. I don't care. It's a great area. But just know that if you do come across a dip in the market, just be like, okay, this is what I was, this is worst case scenario. I went into this with my eyes open. I get it. I know it's going to struggle to sell. I'm not surprised. I took the gamble. I'm okay with that. It's just those people that are like, oh, it's not selling. What's happening? And the agents, telling you, tall stories or whatever. It's just about, I'm not saying not to buy them, but if you buy them, just know that you're like, I'm okay with that. And then it's your money. Do what you want.
Here's an exaggerated version. So I looked at a house on Monday in Curl, which is like a Northern Beaches suburb. So there's a house on the main street there on the beachfront that's on a roundabout as well. But because it's on the main street, it's been on for 6 months and they're trying to get 7 mil for it. Wow. To put it in perspective, the ones one street back, they're a little bit up the hill, are going for 10 plus. So one closer to the beach on a roundabout, because of the noise in the roundabout, 30% less. And they still haven't sold it. It's been 6 months in this market, which is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
They probably thought it was worth more, and they don't. The problem with that, Steve, is when a lot of sellers in the market, they don't know that you have to meet the market. You can't expect the market to meet you, because the first thing I learned at uni was equilibrium. Like, where do you cross? And where you cross is where I want up here, and then you want to sell there. Where do we cross paths? Where is that like I'm willing to give you this much money for the property? So somebody wants to pay less and you want more. Where do you kind of marry up? You can't expect someone to come up here if they're only willing to go here on your property. And that's what you have to understand is, as much as you want to set the price on your home, you think it's worth more, the market will set the price for you. And that's where you have to, otherwise it's going to sit there. And sometimes it actually goes down lower, even if the market's going up, because people go, what's wrong with it? Why, and then these things, like you said, it exaggerates. Like oh, maybe it's because it's on a corner. Nobody wants it because it's on a corner. Then I'm not gonna be
That's
the
what I'm doing.
the
That's
schmuck that bought
exactly
it.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a question. This is a real life case study that's coming on at the moment. So we're building a property portfolio to $150,000 of passive income for the Oz property portfolio, and we've bought a property, and I forget which property this. I think we bought it for $530,000. Then we did a renovation on it, turned it from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. But this is the valuations that we got back. I don't know if you guys can read it fully, but we got such a variation in the values that we've got here. What are your thoughts when you look at this? Because I see our broker has said, oh, we believe it to be 670,000. And then CBA's come back and said 618. So people that are on the podcast, by the way, a desktop valuation by CBA came back at 618. Full val done by NAB was 590. A full val done by ANZ was 670. And then desktop by Westpac 660. Full val by Bankwest 660. Desktop by Macquarie 599. This is $80,000 difference with a full valuation. What is happening here, Belinda? Help me understand.
Wait on desktops because they haven't physically gone out. Usually the banks don't. The reason they've gone to a desktop a lot of the time is if you've got enough equity in your property and you're not borrowing up to that kind of, 95% or whatever. The bank are like, oh, we just need to know what your property's worth. Could be a cost-cutting thing. I don't know. We could have a whole another section on why valuers can sometimes rush through the valuations, and it's I don't know if there's any valuers watching this, but it's probably not a very popular opinion when I say that sometimes valuers do rush through because we're getting so much pressure from the banks. I'll give you an idea. 20 years ago, I did my first valuation, $250 plus GST. Fast forward 20 years later, they're now $180 plus GST. 20 years later, and it is gone backwards. If inflation with everything else, these values should be around $500 to $600, and they're not. Now, value is under extra pressure to do more all day, everywhere, 5, 6, 7, and get it out then and there. Now, the problem is that a valuer has gone into your home and then they're going to just have a look and analyze the market. And just like you said, Steve, different agents can get different prices or they think your property's worth. It's how that valuer has assessed the sales evidence. That's the killer. It's how they've assessed the sales evidence of your property. You said you've gone from a 3 to a 4. They may not have put as much weight on the renovation as maybe another valuer, or they haven't really absorbed that the market's going to pay more for it, given that extra bedroom. I would say it's pretty fair that, 3 of them are almost identical at that 660 and 670 mark. That only one that kind of, so we've had 2 full vals at 670 and 660. It's just that 591. I'd say he or she was the one that was the most out.
This is a conversion, right? So we converted it from a 3 to 4. And this is one of the points that the reason I brought this up for property investors out there is that this is why you have a mortgage broker. So they can go out there and get multiple valuations with multiple lenders, because look at the variation that we have here. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't put too much weight on the desktop ones because they haven't physically gone out, and they're really easy. Guys, if you're watching this and you're not happy with your desktop, there is an option for you to, and don't be afraid to object it and request a full inspection.
Yeah.
Okay. So
exactly. Because if that sucks, where's the desktop? 600,000 and then 620 and then 660 for the Westpac one. Does this also actually, a question that might not be able to answer, but do you see valuations from a desktop perspective? Because obviously full vals are separate to the banks, but do you see that some banks are more keen for lending and they put a higher price to get more equity and things for the value? I don't know. I mean, if that's an insider secret.
Okay, a broker, a lot of the time, it really wastes our time. They put a really high estimate, hoping that they will get more, and then the valuer's done their research before they've gone out, and they're like, this is not a $700,000 property, and all my sales evidence around that $700,000 mark, and then they've kind of got to have a look again, and then they realize it's a lot lower. So I would say out of those, just that one at that 599 and the inspection was probably the one that was the most out. I'm not sure what sales evidence, how they've analysed it, what they've used. It's also a bit tricky, Joe and Steve. We're in an escalating market at the moment. Okay, every month it's going up and up. When there's a thing like data lag, and that is the enemy of a valuer. And a valuer for the bank want us to analyse settled sales. So when you buy a property, it takes 6 weeks to settle, right? They don't want us to analyse or put too much weight on properties that are in between where they've sold but haven't quite settled yet. And we call them reported sales. So sometimes we are relying and analysing sales that are 3 months, 4 months, 5 months old, but the market's moved since then. Okay, and that can be a bit tricky for a valuer to adjust those prices to reflect the value. So sometimes they may have put too much weight on a sale that was like 6 or 7 months old, or 6 months old, sorry, and have maybe not adjusted it enough and increased the value. So that can be a bit tricky because you're valuing it today, but you have no evidence at today's date. So you're relying on sales that have passed. And that's because that's what the bank are like, well, how do you know it's worth 660? Well, here's my sales evidence. And I've adjusted it for yeah, so it's hard. It is really hard. So I encourage you, if you are watching this and the valuer is coming through and you know of a sale that may not have hit, realestate.com yet, or an off market, let them know. Don't be afraid to tell them, print something off, or, say, hey, look, just so you know, it hasn't hit, real estate just yet, or it's got, unconfirmed, like, call agent.
Contact agent,
yeah, I know for a fact that it's sold for this much, and that's a direct comparable to mine. Please consider it.
I think it's worth pointing out, Joe, that the valuations were only 10% apart. Like, I know it seems a lot as an investor, like, $60,000, $70,000 on a 600K. It is 10%. It's not like it's a drastic thing. And then I know with yours, like, you've probably chopped up a lounge room. So you're comparing a 3-bedroom with a big lounge room with a 4-bedroom with a tiny lounge room. Is that 20 grand? Is it 30 grand? So, like, I know we've been making a hard time, and I've been through this personally where I've went and tried to schmooze the value. I've been like, I did this, I renovated this, but this one sold. But it's all within 10%. It's not crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why it's important to get a valuation, multiple valuations done, rather than, like, I see people just going to CBA and saying, hey, CBA, I'm going to use you because I want to use you as the major lender. And then they get a CBA value and it stacks up 618, where using a broker, you can have access to multiple options and get a better valuation. Speaking of pushing our valuations, I want to take a property we bought it for 530. It's now worth 670 based on what the banks are saying. What are some of those tactics that we can use as property investors to inflate the value? Well, not inflate, create more value. What are some of the key ones? So the one I love to do is taking a 2-bed and converting it into a 3-bed, or a 3-bed and converting into a 4-bed. Like, what are some of those hacks and tips and tricks that investors can go out there and use?
It's a good one. Bedrooms always add value. Just be careful not to convert the garage without council approval, because technically when you sell it, somebody will pay more for it, right? I've seen it time and time again. We all see it. Yeah, they do it. They love to do it with villas, and they'll convert a bedroom in a villa, like a strata, townhouse or a villa, from like a 2 to a 3, because they convert the bedroom. Especially if it's like a tandem garage. I just see that all the time. They leave the front as a garage, they put a wall, and then they turn the back into a bedroom, but they don't tell council. So then the valuer goes through, and you're like, and you're looking at the strata plan, and you're like, that's a garage on the strata. This hasn't been officially, converted into a bedroom. Steve, I know you deal a lot with commercial. It's the same with mezzanine floors. A lot of people go in and put a mezzanine floor in a commercial space, but it hasn't been approved. So therefore it's not a legal lettable space. You can rent it for that. But if it burns down, if there's an injury, it can't be insured. It's not a legal lettable area. So the bank want to know, I want to lend money on a property. What should I know? Well, you know that the bedroom's been illegally converted. So it's not legal, right? It's like anything you do, if it's not legal, the legal authorities won't accept it. And that's exactly what the bank is saying to me. So if you are converting, warning, do not do it illegally. Do it by the book. Otherwise, it won't add any value to the value. If anything, they'll have to, what they do is they flag it to the bank and they say, it's going to cost $5,000. So we're going to take 5 or 10 grand off the value to convert it back to, how it originally was. Valuing in Sydney in the early to mid 2000s, when we had a lot of international students, and there was like 5 bedrooms that should have been a 2-bedroom unit, and I'd walk in and there's just bedrooms everywhere because they'd be putting up walls, and it's like, it's 5 bedrooms, like value it as a 5. I'm like, no, I'm not valuing it as a 5-bedroom, mate. It's not legal. Like, you can't expect the valuer. So that would be a good one. Do it legally. Putting a wall up, like an unused like dining room or some part of a living room, knock yourself out. Obviously, the aesthetics of the properties is massive. So tidying it up, cleaning it up. If the kitchens or the bathroom, always the kitchen before the bathroom, in terms of if you had to pick one or the other. The kitchens, they all, kitchen sell houses, do the kitchen up. I always say the way the home presents externally is really important. The facade, the landscaping, the entry into the home. Just really cleaning it up, level yard. I had a client that I helped add some value, and he wanted to do all this stuff to the backyard, retaining walls. And I was like, mate, just hire yourself, like make sure it's legal, like these trees are allowed to go. Cut everything down. I just want grass, okay? This is a family area. Families want grass. Families have kids. Families have dogs. They just want grass. They don't care. Retaining walls, swimming pool, just put grass. And he did it, and I think he probably added $100,000 to his property for a $6,000 landscaping bill. So don't underestimate aesthetically pleasing homes, and just doing what you can to make the homes look good. Because, and remember, again, the people in the market, they're sitting there on Saturday going, oh, that looks nice, babe, look at this. This is nice. Let's go check this out. Why? Because it looks good. So making a home present is number one in terms of increasing the value of the property.
We got a question here for Steve. It's come up. Unapproved mezzanines, value killer or a value maker?
Oh, that's from Jeremy.
Yes,
they're the bane of my existence. However, you can also make quite a lot of money out of them if you know what you're doing. So what he's kind of getting at with that is, like, some areas like Brisbane, 50% of the mezz floors aren't approved. So we buy it, and then guess what? The valuer says it's not approved, so they take it off, and then therefore you don't get the yield. If you can make sure that it's basically built to code, there's an opportunity there, because you can then pre-negotiate the price and get it approved yourself. So typically it's about 10, 12 grand to get a mezz floor approved. So if you can get 50, 80 grand off the purchase price because the value hasn't taken into account, you go do that yourself. Happy days. So that's what Jeremy's getting at with the value makers. There's an opportunity there, but it depends on the seller as well. If you get a pain in the bum seller and they say no to your price reduction, then you're stuck with what Belinda said, is like, you've got an uninsurable risk and you're overpaying and you're not going to get the valuation. So you're going to have to chip in more money into the actual deal to get it over the line.
Yeah. Okay, that's super interesting. What are some other value add hacks that we can take advantage of? And also, what are some of the hacks that you see people doing that don't add value? Like, maybe let's just there's 2 different questions there, but.
Also, when you're answering, is there a difference in price point? Like, do you ever treat like 300 grand different to 500, different to $1 million, different to 3, 5, 10 mil?
You've always, as a valuer, and I hope this helps anybody watching, whenever if you're unsure what a home is worth and the agent's giving you a guide and you're like, your gut's telling you it's like it's low, because chances are it probably is. As a valuer, I never look at things that are for sale. It's always what's sold, because I want to know the market's already spoken, right? It's transacted. I always try and find a floor and a ceiling and then work out until I figure out what mine's worth. So if you know where your property sits, then you will know what the best and top sale is in your suburb and how much then equity you've got to play with, and what your property has to look like to get to that top sale. So if your property's worth $400,000, but nothing is selling above 550, just be really careful that you're not overcapitalizing, because cost of construction is so expensive, and that's a killer right now. It's a cost of construction, because just to put a new kitchen, bathroom, paint, floors, bits and pieces here and there, it just adds up. And then the electricals are shot, the plumbing, 100 grand like that. Sometimes you blink and 100 grand in a renovation, whereas 100 grand will give you a whole new, house reno many years ago. The problem is you spend 100 grand and you're still nowhere near that home that's $200,000 above yours. So you haven't really added. You spend 100 to add 100, and that's the trap you got to be really careful of. Is always understanding how much equity you've got by the best price, or what you can. Oh, that home's similar to mine, renovated. It's worth this. I reckon I can do that for this much, and then I've got that equity. Because equity is all about the difference between what you've spent, or the value, and how much the home's worth. So the market will do the work for you if it's a good reno. And so you spend 100 to make a 100. It might mean that you might not get instant equity. You just wait for the market to take off, and then you can get that out. And in the meantime, you've got better rent and depreciation and things like that. But just be careful that if you're in an entry-level suburb with an entry-level home, give it an entry-level reno. If you're a bit on, in an area that's expecting a lot more and it's a bit more of an affluent area, you can't give it an entry-level reno. So it's all about understanding where that level is, and then trying to match that. So and that's where, stay off those Instagram pages where everything just looks so beautiful and you're like, I want my home to look like that. Fake it till you make it if you can, but don't go and spend, fancy stone and this and that. And, sometimes it's just about having a clean, functional home.
A great little
and that
tip is,
probably, that's probably that where I can give you advice on that.
Yeah, I think the best tip I got from that was chat with the local property managers and say, what do people actually in this demographic, like the demographic that's going to buy my asset, what do they want? And chat to a couple of property managers on that, and you'll quickly realize, I'm like, well, actually, I was thinking about a stone bench top, and they're like, just don't waste your money. Don't be silly. Like, yes, everyone wants a stone bench top, but the people that are renting here are not going to pay you $30 extra because you've got a stone bench top. So just get the laminate. Might even last a bit longer. Probably not, but
I think too, you have to know, because if you're renovating to flip to sell, you've got to step it up a little bit versus renovating for a rental.
Okay.
Sometimes you may not get that equity that you could, but there's no, like I said, you don't want to spend the 100 to make the 100, and then it's about, I think you got to know if you're renovating for the rental as an investment, or you're renovating for a sale, because you're going to get two different renos and two different, prices in there.
What are the things that we can do to optimize to not sell it? That sounds like a really interesting insight that I haven't really heard. Are you renoing to sell or renoing to add value? So how should we think about the add value side of things?
I say with add value to sell, push the envelope a bit more. Like, think of the block, right? Their main priority is to get the most value for the homes come auction day, right? So they're pushing the envelope, they're doing design and all this stuff, and they're trying to get the most out of the home. Now, as a tenant, I'm going in there and like a home buyer, I'm like, oh my God, look at this home. It's so stunning, and it's got all the bells and whistles, and it's the nicest home in the area. I want it. But then, people in the market, they're going to start bidding and outbidding each other, like $5 grand more, $5 grand more. A tenant's going to go, yeah, nice, great, but like I just want I'm only paying for the 3 bedrooms and the bathroom and a new kitchen. I'm not going to pay you overs and above just because it's an overly nice home. Okay, because the rental market might just sort of have a cap in there. And if they're going to pay over, it might be more important the location rather than the home. Does that kind of make sense? So they'll filter that out. You want as many people to get emotionally invested in the sale of your home, and you do that through, pushing design. And you want a homeowner to buy your property, and this is where you don't go too cheap on the improvements, because they can tell. People can tell if it's a cheap reno versus a tenant that's like, I don't mind. It's not that it's cheap and nasty. It's like, I just want a clean home. I want a functional home. I just want a home that's going to suit my needs. I want air conditioning. I want a dishwasher. I want a clean carpet, clean walls, right? Where a homeowner's like, wow, this has got so many more bells and whistles. I'm prepared to pay more for it. So I think if you are going for the two, obviously it's going to be a hell of a lot more expensive reno to flip it, but you're wanting to get extra value for, because the market will pay more for it. So I would just say, just figure out what type of reno you want, and yeah.
Yeah, we've got a great question that's come in here. For anyone who thinks that the valuer did a shit job, when can we challenge the valuation? Can we prepare anything to make the valuer's job easier, or what is the process to object to a valuation, right? Like, let's just say I've got these valuations here and I was I only did this desktop. Well, let's just say it was a full value by inquiry and it came back at 600 and I believe it's worth 660,000. What can we do?
The desktop, straight out object, and you'll have no issue with the valuer coming out. Easy, right? Okay. Once the valuer has come out and then done their valuation, it's not impossible, but it's a lot harder. And I think we spoke about this, Steve. It is a lot harder to change their opinion. You've got to remember. Now, I'm going to take this. If I'm a valuer and I've just put my name on this document, and then I've gone, maybe I was a bit soft on it, I'll put a bit more. And then I go to court and the judge is like, oh, it's like I've got 2 documents here, Belinda. What is it? Is it $599 or is it 600? 670, because you weren't sure the first time and now all of a sudden it's got more. Which one is it? So the credibility of the valuer automatically diminishes, and that's what we're a bit kind of worried about. The best way it's not impossible, but don't go, oh, you did a shit job, value it for more. It's like, I respectfully disagree with your valuation, instead of going, you did a shit job, but I respectfully disagree, and then come back with some sales evidence. That's all I can say. That's the best thing you can do. Get a copy of the bank, get a copy of the report, read through the report and see what risk ratings they put on it. See, some valuers weigh more on the risk ratings, okay? So if it's on a main road, some valuers are a lot more conservative, where others are like, nah, it's not, I don't think it's that much of a big deal. So sometimes if a home is a little bit problematic, valuers can weigh the risk a little differently versus a home is your home, sorry, Joe, to go off topic, is it on a quiet street? Is it near a school? Is there anything that might have triggered, did you read the report by any chance?
No.
You got 6
reports.
I didn't read one.
I didn't read any of it. Well, no, I was happy with 670. I saw 670. I was like, that's bloody good. I'm very happy with that.
The valuer says, you didn't read my report. You didn't understand my commentary. It's a bit like saying, well, how do you know I'm wrong if you didn't read the report? You just went off a figure, right? There's like a 15-page report. So I would say get the report, read through it. If there's some sales evidence, if there's some commentary in there you don't agree with, go back and say, hey, they missed this sale and this sale within 3 months, within that 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, depending on the radius. Can you please analyze these and come back to me? You can't do it. You'll have to go through your broker, or your broker will have to go through the lender. Hard thing is, guys, it's like you own the home, you went through your broker, but the bank is lending the money. So you're like down the line of the third party. It has to go through the bank. And sometimes the bank will just straight out say no before the valuer even has a chance to review what you said. So just keep that in mind as well.
Love it.
We
Okay,
had-
well, we're going to...
I was going to say, Joe, we had one with a commercial property. I think we spoke about this as well, where they said a property was in a flood zone. And we went back, we're like, this is definitely not in a flood zone. Went back to the valuation, told them they weren't in the valuer that it wasn't in a flood zone. They said, oh, yep, sorry, that was a mistake. But again, like you said, they didn't change their price. And I'm like, there's definitely a difference in value between a flood zone and not. But again, they didn't want to put their name to, oh, no, we were wrong. Here's an extra 300,000. So we had to go to a different valuation company to get the real valuation.
It's just really hard. Yeah, it's just really hard as a valuer because all the risk sits with us.
Yeah, it's a proper massive problem because the banks are looking for a throat to choke, right? And it's going to fall back on them.
Not the bank, the bank's lenders. I mean, the mortgage insurers. That's why you pay LMI. You pay LMI for the mortgage insurers to sue the valuer. It's like a car crash. You crash your car, NRMA pays you out, and you're like, see ya. And then NRMA's like, well, who caused the accident? Oh, the valuer did. Let's go after the valuer. And the bank's on their merry way. They don't care. They're living. They don't care. But the insurer is like, okay, who do we sue? Where do we get our money from? So they go after the broker, they go after the valuer, they go after whoever. But they always go after the valuer because it was their report that they lent on.
One of the questions I want to ask that Elijah asked about duplexes. How do you go about valuing them? Because I remember back in the day, I used to really struggle because you knew what the house cost, you knew what townhouses cost, but half a duplex, you're like, it's got to be somewhere in the middle. And there was never multiple sales evidence. There was always this like one or two in the suburb that had sold in the last 6 months.
Duplexes are hard when there's no other duplexes in the area because you've got a new product on a small block and all your other sales evidence are big blocks and older homes. So then it's about, then you go, okay, well, it's a good home, but on a small block. And again, you just try, it's a bit methodical with the valuers. You just try and work out your floor and your ceiling. And then you kind of work out with your sales evidence where it sits. It can be a little bit of, I guess, objective there in the valuer's opinion because of the lack of sales evidence. But then it just comes down on, okay, well, this is a really, really great home on a great block. So that's going to be my ceiling because there's no way it's getting more than that. And this is a small block with a okay home. So I know it's definitely there. And that's where you kind of work it out. If you've got sales evidence, dime a dozen, it's a lot easier. With his duplex question, if you are developing, just be mindful that the valuer is instructed to value it in one line because until the day it is subdivided, if you forfeit your loan or you go in mortgagee possession, the bank take over the site with 2 dwellings on it, and then they'll sell it in that condition. So really, the only way that that's going to be sold is off to a developer or somebody that's going to buy 2 duplexes on the one site. Okay, so it's not, this is worth 1 million, this is worth 1 million, my site's worth 2. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that come into play. So if you are doing a feasibility on a duplex, just remember that the valuer is valuing it in one line. So they will value each unit independently, but there will be some contingencies in place to bring it back in the event that it is sold in one line and that diminishing in that market, because no one's going to buy $2 million and then have to pay, 50 or 60 grand in legal fees to get it divided and, subdivided and then putting them on the market to sell to then realize that growth. There'll be a discount in place. So until it's subdivided, a valuer will always value them in one line. So just keep that in mind.
Love
duplex,
that.
Duplex, block of units.
Yeah, and that's where I guess the valuations can get a little bit varied. We have to jump to our first sponsor. I want to unpack dual income. I want to talk about granny flats and understanding those strategies because there's so much within that where it gets really, really interesting. So let's watch this, then unpack this granny flat deals and go in. And if anyone's got any questions, start throwing them in there and we can start hitting them.
me mama Wednesday night, 'cause it was prop night.
Oh, Jeff, I wish there was 3 investing books that covered everything property.
Oh, Joe, there is. Steve has 3 books now.
That I do, guys. I got 3 books now. You probably don't even have to follow this group anymore. Just kidding. You want to keep seeing and hearing from me, of course, so stay involved. But in all seriousness, if you want to get the full picture of investing, residential, commercial, and development, these 3 books have you covered for the fundamentals. For OzProp members, here's the best part. I'm giving these books to you for free. Just cover the postage and I'll send them right to your door. Go to policeyproperty.com or click the link below and get your copies today. You can also get all my spreadsheets, checklists, and resources free on my website. Happy reading, gang.
There it is. Happy reading. Also, by the way, for Oz Property people out there, we also have a live event on September 14th, is it? Sunday?
No, I booked it. I let me go to the calendar.
September
14th, Sunday, September 14th. Yep. Shangri-La, Sydney.
Yep. Oh, Shangri-La. So if anyone wants to come meet us in real life, Belinda, you're invited as well. Absolutely. You can come if you would like. But come on down. It is a great chance to meet like-minded people. A community has really built everything that I have in my life, to be honest. Meeting events like this is where you meet cool people that vibe with you. It's so hard to get a community of like-minded people together, and that's exactly what this is. So anyway, Belinda, I want to chat through granny flats because these are something that have been around for decades. But I think recently, as interest rates have started to climb, it's become a far more interesting topic for investors. So what are your thoughts on granny flats as an investment opportunity or as a deal? And from a valuation perspective, how do you think about these things?
To be honest with you, I love them when they're inserted in your portfolio at the right time strategically. They can be really great. However, if you don't know what you're doing and you're just doing it for the sake of doing it because you saw a video of someone going, oh, I put a granny flat in and I've got all this extra rent and blah, 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 blah. It's not the best strategy at that point in time. From a valuation perspective, when we value, and sometimes the problem is, I think you mentioned earlier, they can be like a capital growth killer, because you've got to remember a lot of the time it is just the value of the granny flat that essentially you're adding to the value of the home. So you haven't, or maybe just a smidge more, but it's not enough to really increase the value. So you've got a meaty equity release. It's great for a rental return. You're essentially buying a rental return, building a granny flat. You're essentially buying rent, a property that gives you rent. Now, the reason when we value them, we've got to also compare it with other homes that are dual income, or other properties that allow for. It is tough. And we've got to, I think it's more than 3 areas of occupancy in a home, and then it starts going into that commercial territory, but we're talking about sort of that 2 at the moment. It's what happens, I do this all the time. Sorry, I keep using my fingers. If you can, say that there's the home is worth $1 million, and then you put a granny flat on there for 200, and then once you landscaping and everything, it owes you 250. Chances are that home's probably worth maybe 1.3. Let's say. What you'll find is that the home does the heavy lifting for the value. Okay, it's the main house that people want, and the granny flat is just like a nice to have. Now, if you're in the market for $1 million, for a $1.3 million home, maybe you want something better, something bigger, something nicer, and for 1.3, automatically you've lost 70% of your market because they're like, I don't want to spend 1.3 and get a house and a granny flat. I want for 1.3, I wouldn't mind a nicer house. I wouldn't mind a better house. I want a yard. I want a pool. I want my kids to run around. I want the dog to run in the yard. I don't want some strangers living in my backyard. So I'm not going to pay a premium for that. And then you have maybe 30% of the market that are investors looking for it or intergenerational living. So what you're essentially doing is isolating your market to 30%, and those 30% are the ones that will be paying for your property. When you are attracting investors only, investors always buy with the head, and they always sort of stop. They stop when the numbers don't make sense. So for them, they're analyzing the rental yield, they're analyzing, the sale of the property based on the numbers, and they're not going to pay you 1.5 so you get that nice equity release on a property that is really worth $1 million with a granny flat bonus at the back. So that's how it affects the value of the property. When is a granny flat a good idea for an option, in my opinion? I don't know if you agree or not. I like to insert them, or if you're planning on a granny flat, buy the land that allows for the, it's got a nice, yard for a granny flat corner block. Kind of sit it in the market for the time being. As you're building your portfolio, you might find that your borrowing capacity is capped, or the banks turn around, however you want to borrow it, and they'll say, oh, you can only borrow about $200,000 for now. You might be, maybe down into that phase into the retirement, so you don't want to take on too much more debt. Like, I'll take on an extra $200,000, put a granny flat, and get that income to help pay down some loan. Okay, so it's sometimes about inserting the granny flat. It's like having that ace up your sleeve and going, okay, now strategically in my portfolio, whenever it works for you, now's a great time to insert that granny flat because I need income. I've got my capital growth, my portfolio is doing well, but I wouldn't mind some income. I've only got $250,000, $300,000 to play with. I could put the granny flat in. I've got more, rental that allows for better borrowing capacity. I've got a little bit of equity. I'll take that and then perhaps get more borrowing and go again. So it's great.
It's a strategic placement in the portfolio rather than doing it because you can do it. It's about taking, like, the way we like to talk about it is there's 3 phases of property investing. There's the accumulation phase, there's the consolidation phase, and then there's cash flow. That's funny because Joe is the foundation phase, Belinda's talking about like granny flats and value add, and then Steve is that cash flow component. So all 3 of us are here. You accumulate the portfolio, you have add value type deals. And there's a comment that's just come up here from Jeremy again. Client did a granny flat in the Northern Beaches, $320,000 to purchase, and to build it, $1,550 a week in rent. So they may have had that property for 10 years, but only when they needed to build it, they took advantage of it and did it. Now that's a ridiculous rent for a granny flat. So it is about timing it into the portfolio. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you need to be doing it now, because can that allocation of capital be used to grow the portfolio bigger and buy another asset that's going to grow? Because you put $200,000 into a granny flat or 320, it may not give you that equity, but it's taking your cash.
I can almost guarantee you that's a multi-million-dollar home in the first place, being in the Northern Beaches.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I can almost guarantee you that at 320 they built a really nice granny flat, not just an entry level one. So and I can almost guarantee that they didn't buy that just to put a granny flat in the back of it. They probably had that there. And that's what I was saying about if you see growth in an area, buying it and then kind of set and forget, or buying it with the intention of putting a granny flat, but strategically applying that granny flat maybe later on. If that was their principal place of residence and they just had a yard that they, aren't really using, stick a granny flat in it. It's about being strategic, not buying, because if they had $2 or $3 million to buy a house in the Northern Beaches, 4 or 5 million, whatever it was, they're not doing it and going, oh, I'm going to compromise my yard and losing value because, just to get a rental return. They've done it in a way that they thought was a strategic play at that time.
One of the points you mentioned as well is you don't get more valuation because you've got a granny flat. And I hate the buyer's agents to say that, like, oh, we built a granny flat, pulled out 20% equity. And I'm like, you didn't.
Unless you're in the Northern Beaches and it's always like that percent, that upper value, right? You've added a granny flat and the yield, it's got incredible return. Somebody may pay a bit more for it. But if the thing is, I find most investors and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, that sweet spot for a lot of people for like it is about that $600,000 to $800,000. Like everyone seems to have this cushion of $600,000 to $800,000, and this is a far cry from a home that's potentially worth millions of dollars, where you can get, you know, $500,000 in equity growth from a $300,000 granny flat, for instance. So if you're in an $800,000 price bubble and you're spending 200,000 or 250 on a granny, you're in the $1 million mark, and that might push you into that real kind of 1% of the market in your suburb. And they're like, I would rather a better home or take my money in a better suburb. So you kind of get that in between buyer going, you know, what do I buy?
Have you seen like dual income properties or granny flats that actually lowered the value of the property? Like, what are the situations in which you should probably definitely not consider using and doing this strategy?
So someone wants to say hello.
Hey guys. Massive, so much bigger than
he's huge. The vet was like, he'll grow. No, the pet shop, he'll grow 5 to 7 kilos. He's 10.
It's the Greek diet.
The Greek diet.
The Greek diet.
Oh mate. I've seen homes that have been subdivided into, like, you know, a 1-bedroom flat, a 2-bedroom flat, and then like a self-contained studio, just for multiple income, because the income is worth more chopped up like this instead of, you know, a single family dwelling. It can have an adverse effect on the value because the market's not going to pay. The market is a family area that want a family home. They're not investors. And sometimes the price point is too high for an investor. It's not like an investor area.
Yeah.
And people are like, for me to convert this to a family home, it's going to cost too much. I'm not paying to convert it back. It's a big job. I'd rather just take my money elsewhere, where the owner's like, well, I'm getting this much rent, so it's going to yield well. I want more money for my property. That it can hurt the property then in the value. So when we value, another thing I should mention, unless it's a commercial, and then we've got to capitalize and analyze the rent. If we are valuing it on a residential basis, it's on a vacant possession, meaning we don't take the rent into consideration at all.
At all for residential. You totally exclude rent. Oh, that's such a great point.
Unless the rent is registered on title, like an NDIS, or if it's, you know, something where there's a title, there's a lease on title. Okay. Even if there is a lease in place and you can't break it, the valuer still assesses it on a vacant possession. And again, by vacant, I mean no furniture, no lease in place, clean title, XYZ. So that's why, even though you might be getting exceptional rent, it will help with the loan, but the bank also want to know if it was vacant tomorrow, how would it be? Yeah.
I think a lot of this comes down to the area for me, and actually crunching the numbers and doing the due diligence. When you're doing something new and creative, you don't want to be the first person doing the new and creative thing. It's the same with property development. You don't want to go to an area that has 0 developments done, because you're not the first person to do it and you haven't seen it, a case where it actually works. And it's the same that I see in granny flats. A great instance is the city of Logan. Logan's, made up of 70 suburbs, but there are areas where it totally made, about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, it made perfect sense to get a granny flat. I was seeing people buying a $500,000 property, putting on a $200,000 granny flat, and it growing to $800,000, $900,000, because that's what the people there saw value in, and the valuations went crazy on it. And then there are other situations where it just absolutely doesn't make any sense. You're going to buy $300,000 granny flat, and you're only going to get $250, $300 a week in rent, and then the yield is not, it's not that great. That's if you're buying a $300,000 granny flat and you're getting $300 a week in rent, that's a 5.2% yield gross. Like that's not great. Like that's what a normal residential you can get. I guess in regional Queensland you can get that, not really anywhere else, maybe Perth. What's my point of saying that is it just comes down to case by case, market by market. It's just not as easy. Now, other situations where, like, I've seen valuation, like when in, I guess it's just not council approved granny flats. Is there situations where I can get a granny flat and not have it council approved? I've seen situations where someone has an incredible granny flat at the back of their house, and then we go through the second and third phases of due diligence, and we're like, hey, wait, can you just give me the piece of paper that the council said, yeah, you can have that? The valuer comes in and they're like, oh, wow, this is an incredible house. Oh, cool shed at the back. And we're like, well, it's not a cool shed. It's actually a granny flat, a 2-bedroom granny flat that probably costs $350,000. He's like, yeah, but it's not allowed to be there. It's butted up against the fence. The service is not connected correctly. This is illegal. So you've got a cool shed at the back and it's not worth anything. I don't know if there's a question in that, but do you see that often?
Yeah, you see a garage conversion, again, going back to that detached garage at the back. If it's a good, it can turn legal. So unless the agent really should be doing their due diligence and relaying that up front to the buyer and saying, hey, there's a granny flat. It's rented, $300 a week, but it's not approved. Okay, an agent, I think they really should have a duty of care to inform the buyer that this is not approved, and we can't
100%.
advertise it as a legal granny flat. Same thing with tiny homes. Same things with people buying, rural properties and going, oh, we're doing an Airbnb tiny home situation. The rule is that, okay, if you sell it, somebody will pay you a premium for it because it's cool. It's like, oh, there's a demandable, type property on it. I'm going to pay. However, for a valuer, the rule is, again, it's not us, it's the bank asking us to value it this way. I'll use my glass of water. If it sits on the property, see how it's floating? If it sits on the property and it's not connected and it's not approved and it's on wheels or something like that, and it's a demountable, and you can literally pick it up and move it tomorrow, the value would not consider it at all. It's like having a car or a caravan on your property. Yeah, you can hook the caravan to the back of the car and drive it off, right? So if you want that property to be considered as part of the market value of your property, get it approved. If it's a pretty cool granny flat, the valuer will consider it as like a teenage retreat or like a studio, and that will add a bit of value, but just not as heavy. The weight of that value is not the same as if it had the council approval. So be wary that if you are buying a demountable home that's not permanent, on a property, you might get more for it on the sale, but if it's important, if you're putting it on thinking that you're going to get equity because the valuer is going to give you more for it, they probably won't. And again, just be mindful, it's not going to have, like, it's 1 in a billion. If it burns down and you got a tenant in there and they get hurt, you won't get insurance for it, and you're pretty screwed. So
yeah, that's such a great point. So I guess this might be an easy question for you, but from a value add situation, the Oz property portfolio, we just bought a property that is, I don't know what the number is, but let's just say 800 square meters. It's a corner block, and we can split it into 2 legally via subdivision, but we can also put a granny flat on it. What would you go with? Subdividing it, splitting it off and put it on separate titles with a new house, which is going to cost, I don't know, 600,000 or 500,000, or doing the granny flat? What are your thoughts around that?
Always run your numbers, Joe, and I'm sure you guys do it there. Run your numbers on both, because if you can subdivide it, obviously it's a lot more expensive. Always work on your difference between your all-in money versus the end value, and whichever one is bigger for you, right? And if this is if you're holding on to it, then perhaps the 2 homes over the long term will grow more than just the house with the granny, versus are you doing this to flip and you're trying to get as much money after the project's done. So sometimes it could be an area that is slowly gentrifying or doing well, and then you find that they'll pay a premium for 2 separate homes versus a home with a granny flat. So it's about running the numbers there, I think, depending if you want to hold it or sell it. Well, and you got more options with the 2. You can sell one, keep one, where you can't do that with a granny flat. You can't, keep the house and sell the granny. It comes as a package. But it's going to cost you $250,000 to build versus, going through and getting it legally, chopped up, and you're in at 550, for instance, house and
house and subdivide. But it's just case by case. I realize we're actually getting very close in on time, so we're going to run to our final ad. But then also, I want to jump to some of the questions that people have. Now, we do have a new ad, so get ready, people. This is a little bit of a different one.
They said a savior
like 10
would
minutes
come,
again, is it?
one who could see value where others saw fear, a buyer's agent who could turn data into destiny. Behold, Joe Tucker, an award-winning buyer's agent of Property Principal.
Whoa, what is this? Next thing you're going to see is driving off in our Lamborghinis, throwing cash about. You guys know Jeff and I, we don't really like to roll that way, right? We've been running this group for 5 years. We've been sharing all the data, all the strategies, all the tools, all the tips, all of the tricks that work in today's market to secure the best deals. But here's the thing though, if you're putting a part-time effort into something, you're going to get to a part-time result. And that's no difference with property, right? If you're dropping $500,000 to $1 million on property, this whole she'll be right attitude gets pretty expensive. What is the hardest part about building a portfolio? It really just comes down to time, knowledge, and execution. So if you don't have the time, you don't know what the heck you're doing, and you're afraid you're going to mess it up, then don't do it. That's literally why I do what I do. Most people don't even realize this, but I'm actually a buyer's agent. I run Property Principal's buyer's agency, and we have helped hundreds of investors get the right properties in the right locations so that they can scale their portfolio to $150,000 of passive income or more. Because why? Because we follow some core principles. We use a lot of data to pick the right locations. Think about it, the hot spots before there's ever heat. We get boots on the ground in every single location that we buy in. I have been there, checked it out, and approved the area. And we only buy in areas, and we only buy properties that we would want in our own portfolios. And that's how, in 2024, last year, we got a 21% growth across all of our client purchases, when the national average was 4.7%. For instance, Matt and Tina, a young couple, they bought 3 properties with us. They've built over $768,000 worth of equity, and they're still working full time. No dream selling here, but I tell you what, they're going to have a killer retirement. Phil, he's a young kid. He's just bought his first property with us. He's now on to his third, which is super exciting. He bought the first one, $595,000. That is now worth $770,000. He did a great little renovation up front. It's now grown $175,000. That's nearly 30% growth in under a year and a half. So it does take a little bit of time. Gosh, it does get there. Mandeep, 11 months ago, we got him early into the Victoria market, and that property's grown from $555,000 to $610,000 in under 12 months with plenty of runway to go. Yes, we've had some big wins, but it's not an overnight get-rich-quick scheme. This whole property game is about smart, strategic decisions done well and taking the action. So I'm not here to sell you the dreams, but if you're ready, book in a discovery call. We can chat about what your next move is and if we can actually help. Let's do it.
Done. Some solid montages there, Joe.
Yeah, I feel like the opened very strong. I love the opening of that. Some weird AI superhero Joe. But I feel like there needs to be more funny jokes in that. I feel like we need a few more puns. Anyway, I think it went for too long as well. That was our new ad. So what are we talking about here, Belinda? There was a great question that popped up here. What is the best value for money things that you've come across? So like low value, low cost, high impact.
Say this, and sorry if you've heard me on other podcasts, I'll say it again and again. And I saw you had a little snippet of it walking through a property, a coat of paint. Do not underestimate how much just value a coat of paint can add to a property. The amount of homes that I'm like, I'm looking and I'm like, I paint that. I just replace the carpet, 50 grand, just like that. So I think I mentioned before aesthetics. What would make that home look better? New flooring, do it. Painting it, do it. Just put some curtains or some blinds, do it. Changing the light fittings, anything that's aesthetically a bit ugly and then you replace it with something aesthetically pretty is probably the easiest and it's that low hanging fruit, right? Like if the kitchen and bathroom are okay, what are you going to do quickly that can add value? The floors and the paint are usually where you start and then you go up from there. Knocking down some walls, of course, it's going to, open up space. You can very quickly have that kitchen, living, dining open space as long as it's not load bearing. So get a proper builder engineer in there. And aesthetic, like things aesthetically to the kitchen. We had a blue kitchen in an investment property and we got it painted white and changed the handles and sold straight away. If we had it blue, it would have struggled. So there's things that you can do. Paint. Easiest, and I know it sounds like simple, but trust me, externally too, I said it earlier, just clean up the landscaping. The biggest bang for your buck sometimes, and maybe the best value for money is landscaping and painting.
That used to be my go-to. You go spend 10 grand, the lawn looks amazing. I used to also spray the roof. So you'd go pay your $2.5 grand, get a guy to spray the roof, and all of a sudden, clean grass, tidy mulch, sprayed roof, the house looks completely different.
Yeah, it makes that's such a great point.
Tens of thousands. It's 20 grand, and you can really any home you can transform.
Yeah, really I went past a deal that was recently renovated, and like they just had they had the letterbox and they had like this wooden frame thing out the front, and when you stood out front of the house, it was like that must have been $800, $1,000 installed, and it just made the home feel incredible. You just felt like it's like, oh, I'm on holiday. This is a cool vibe, and you had that curb appeal, and it doesn't have to cost tens of thousands of dollars to get that. What are some other, like, have you got any little hacks, Steve? Like little value add hacks that you've kind of that have implemented over the years?
For Rosie, it was the big one, the landscaping one. But even stuff like you mentioned, a cool letterbox can actually change it. When you got like the old crappy cast iron one that's half fallen over, just buy the nice big block one with the nice numbers on it. Front doors was the one I always focused on as well. If you got like a bad light at the front and a crummy front door, spend the $300 and get a nice fresh front door with some stained glass windows or whatever suits the style, a new light there. That's what they're seeing. They see the house. They walk up the driveway, they see the front door. You've already somewhat convinced them before they've even walked inside.
A good gurney.
Good
your
gurney.
driveway, the side of the home. And a pet peeve hate of mine is if you're getting a home and they've got bars on the windows, or it's got the 90s, they had the diamond like on the fly screen and on the windows. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's like the aluminium or the metal.
Yeah, the little
like that,
thin.
like heaps of them. They're all diamonds. Take it off. Yuck. Out. Done. So yeah, it's fly screens. Just regular fly screens instead of the diamond stuff. So.
Yeah. Another one for me is updating the light switches and power points for people, because you go in and you don't realize it. So you've just done a brand new fresh coat of paint and it's all white and luxurious. And then there's just this yellow stained power point and light switch, or the painter, because they do, especially if you're doing it cheap, have painted all over it. And like literally I've seen, we just did a renovation on our place and the guy's like, yeah, the paint's all done. And I'm like, it's a little bit too done, mate. You've painted over the switches and you've painted all over them. He's like, yeah. You told me you were replacing them all. So we just painted, like, it was just, and I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. Okay. But some painters don't care. They just don't give a crap. Any other hacks? Anyone that's got any questions, guys, throw them in. We're going to be pulling them up as you go along. But any other little hacks and tips and tricks to push that value a little bit further?
The opposite instead of it.
Yeah.
You go, mate. You go.
I went on one where I did the paint and the carpet, but then like you mentioned, the light switches, the windows were still really old and crummy, and I was like, people are going to walk in here and be like, "This is terrible. I'm going to have to replace that." So if they're thinking they're going to have to replace it, they're already reducing your price. So I paid the 25 grand or whatever it was and replaced every window. Then inside didn't do the kitchen bathroom, like Belinda said. They were the two things I didn't touch. Actually, no, I did the handles on the doors in the kitchen. And then the shower screen, because I had an old shower screen for the $200 from Bunnings, looks like fresh. And then I paid for the windows, knowing that they were going to think that anyway. So all of a sudden, new carpet, new paint, new windows, new handles on the doors. Everything looks brand new besides the tiles in the bathroom, basically. Oh, and a mirror, fresh mirror. Never skimp on a good bathroom mirror.
Yeah. That's solid, mate. Solid. What about decking at the al fresco or front fencing? Is this something that comes up?
Not for me. Clean and
So
simple.
be careful decking. I love it. It's going to add value, but are your tenants going to maintain it and oil it every year and look after it? Just kind of weigh that out. Sorry, Joe, this goes back to my point about renovating for sale and then renovating for a tenant. If it was about the tenant, I would maybe put tiles in the back instead of decking, or a composite deck that doesn't need maintenance. Because if this is like a timber decking that's going to need annual oiling, and unless you're prepared to pay someone to do it and you just expect the tenant to do it, they might not, and then you might need to replace it because it's rotted away or it's got water damage or something. So decking, I love a good outdoor deck. I'm sure a lot of Aussies do. Also, a front fence, see what your neighbours are doing. If all your neighbours have got them out the front and it's a part of the streetscape and it goes with your neighbourhood, think about it. But if you're the only one with a front fence, it can work both ways. If you're the only one without it, could maybe affect the value. And if you're the only one with it, no one's going to pay you more for it.
So as a valuer, do you think about that? Like, does that come up? You have to put that in your thoughts. Yeah, right.
Yeah, you do, because it's that, like, if you've got it in, we'll just like, nah, and you might have just got it, installed for $18,000, like, sides and front, and we're not going to add much value to it.
So this is the property that I was talking about. We just purchased the most recent one, and you can see here, this is exactly what this was a rental, and you can this is the undercover deck, and how much it's kind of fine. Like the deck that's on the floor right now here is absolutely fine, but this one here is completely ruined because the tenants haven't done anything. It's not their deck; they don't really care. So it's just molded and gone absolutely rotten. But to get this replaced, it's going to cost us, what was the quotes, 8 to 10 grand to just this little bit of decking here. And it doesn't add any value whatsoever. So all we got, like, having that deck there is not going to push the value up. So what we're going to be doing is just putting crushed rock, like whatever this stuff is here, just put crushed rock down. And then all of a sudden, instead of paying 10 grand, we're paying a lot less, but we're getting the same uplift of value, which, well, not uplift, we're just making it not look like dirt. It's going to be something else. So don't go crazy. Just because there was a deck there doesn't mean you need to replace it with a deck, because it actually added zero value for anyone. I was
going to say, Joe, we bought a house in Katoomba to live in for the first year during COVID, and that's where we lived. And the same thing, had a beautiful back deck. It was huge, the whole, because it was on kind of like a terraced kind of property. Awesome. And then what happened was it rained for like the whole winter consecutively for like 3-4 months, got spongy, and then all of a sudden feet started going through. We put a tenant in it, and then there was this constant maintenance, and we have to replace the whole thing. So it was about 20 grand. So something that we bought 5 years ago going, oh, this is nice, was a 20 grand liability.
Yeah. And again, did I say this actually on this episode? But one of my first investment properties I bought, I didn't look at the value, that stuff that didn't add value. So the stairs were completely ruined, and I had to spend $12,000 on brand new sets of stairs. But when we did the valuation, we did a $30,000 renovation. Stairs, $12,000, electrical upgrade, which was $6,000, roof repairs. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I've spent 30 grand on this. Let's go. $280,000, 30 grand in. It got valued at 310,000. Why? I guess, Belinda, maybe that's why was that? Why was my little silly ideas?
You spent you spend probably money on things that add no value. For instance, I always compare it to a car. You buy a car, you expect the brakes to work, you expect the horn to work, you expect the windows to go up and down. Okay.
Yeah.
When you buy a home, you expect the electrical to work, you expect, the roof not to
Yeah.
leak, you expect, windows to, open and close. And if you bought the home and then you realize, oh, actually the wiring shot, the windows are, I have to spend money on things that should have been working at the time of buying, a buyer is not going to pay you more just because the home's worth more. I mean, just because you spend money on things that should have already been working at the time of purchase. Does that make sense? Just like I'm not going to pay you more just because your brakes work on the car. They should have worked when I bought the car. And I think going back to, sorry, Steve, I think you were saying if there's something wrong with the property, people take value off. Again, going back to a car, let's say you go out to a car, you're going to buy a car from, Facebook Marketplace. There's a huge scratch on the side. That scratch is going to cost $800 most to take it to the panel beaters and fix it. But you're going to knock $5,000 off the price of the car. I'm not giving you 55 for the car, ma'am. I'm giving you 50. Look at the scratch. It's the same with a home. So if you see something that's wrong with the property, and it's the stairs, for instance, it's a $12,000 fix. I'm like, oh, 12 grand, I'm knocking 50 grand off the price. So you go to the buy, and this is both ways. And we've all done it. We've seen a home and you go to the agent, oh mate, there's all this stuff wrong with it. I've got to replace the deck. The deck's going to cost me 100 grand. It's like, no, it's not, mate. It's going to cost you 20, but you're going to take 100 grand off it. So sometimes it's not about adding value to your home. It's about keeping the value because your buyers are going to take money off the bottom. So it's about presenting it in a way that the buyer's like, I don't actually have to do anything to this home. I can either move straight in or put tenants straight in. And for that, I'm paying a slight premium, or I'm not taking anything off the value. Because or a keen investor is like, oh, they haven't done anything. I can do all this for 20. I'm going to knock 100 grand off. I'm going to spend 20 to add the 100 back. So it works both ways.
And also there's things in the property, like I had a real estate. So as I said at the beginning, we have a real estate agent coming into saying like, we need to sell your property. And we have like settlement cracks in the unit. And he's like, let's get that fixed. And I'm like, I bought it like this. And then I realized, I'm like, of course, as a buyer that comes in, they see a problem and it starts to raise questions. And that's a $200 fix. But it's then like, oh, well, what else is there? And then there's like, stains on the carpet. And then there's something, cracked tile here. And then it starts to like, all of these little things start to add up to people. And people aren't very good at math. So when someone sees a crack, they're like, oh my gosh, structurally, there's something wrong with it and it's going to fall down. Or, oh, well, that's going to cost me $1,000 to fix. I'm going to take $5,000 off the price. Reality, it's going to cost $200 to fix. So try and set up your property for sale so that there's no questions. There's no unanswered questions for them. They walk in, all of the little bits and pieces have been done. So that you don't have to you don't get shot.
You would have seen this. You would have seen this on the buyer's agent side, Joe, as well. And I've had back when I was doing lots of resi. Was you get a build and pest report, and the client would just freak out because like, oh, there's missing a tile in the bathroom, and the window's cracked, and the doorknob's missing this, and they list out the 10 items. I'm like, all right, calm down. Let's go through. There's probably $2 or $3 grand worth. Let's go for $4 or $5 grand off. Let's just do it. But they just panic once it becomes more than 2 or 3. It's just. Yeah, they start second guessing everything.
And that's probably something worthwhile to mention for investors out there. When you buy a new property, wherever it is, it's probably going to cost $3 to $5 grand or maybe even 10 grand of little bits and pieces and rubbish stuff to fix. So just going in there, expect $5 grand of costs. Just doorknobs that are missing, things that haven't been adjusted, light bulbs that need to be fixed, door handles, like what else have we had in this bloody place? I'm just thinking of all the stuff, rubbish removal, and just an automatic expectation. So I just think so many people go into this stuff with their eyes shut thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have to spend anything. And then the bill comes, they're like, oh shit, this is a lot. But you're not the one. Like Victoria, for instance, we spent like 12 to 15 grand on this property because I'm not there to screw in the light bulb, to screw in the door, but you got to pay someone to do it. And I wouldn't drive over to someone's place, screw in a doorknob for less than $200. So
well, I've got a good question for Belinda. Are there any like technology things that you find will help kind of value a home. So like a funny example is one of my mates built his house 5 years ago in Macquarie Park out in Sydney's West. And he put in the PowerPoints that had the USB chargers on. He's like, oh, people are going to love this. No one uses USB chargers anymore, although use like the Apple ones and that. Is there anything like that that can help, or like power saving, or just cool, I don't know, cool lighting?
It's that they point out to the value and we don't get like, oh, we've got dimmers. We've got smart, it was the old, they don't use it so much now, like the C-bus system. It's like, oh, the whole house is automated from this one, Google Play throughout the whole property. Everything's connected to an app. Technology moves so quickly. I think a big one, and I mean, happy to come back and you can bring other professionals, and this is a really important topic. Get ready, because green ratings are something that is coming into play. I don't want to say too much, but valuers are starting to as working for a big firm, behind the scenes, guys, banks are gearing valuers up to start valuing and rating homes on their energy, and this is going to change the game. I don't know how long until it becomes reality, and if it's going to be legislated, but every home is going to potentially have a star rating, just like when you build a new home, you have that basics. So this is where I would maybe concentrate on. So if you are upgrading the hot water system, maybe think about getting a solar. Like, don't do it. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if you are fixing it, maybe think of a better, green version of that. If you are doing the plumbing, then maybe put a filtration system in, or do something that it will pay dividends later on down the track. But technology stuff, like just the creature comforts, and it's not technology, but if you're replacing the garage door, get one with a remote. If you're doing put an aircon in, and don't put a kitchen without a dishwasher. No, you won't, but just if you're umming and ahhing, just do it. And I think the green energy would be more important than a technological advanced home, especially where you are. But I just wanted to add, before I forget, because my brain goes, and we were talking about building and pest, a hack that I've told a couple of my clients is, before you sell your home, especially if it's a rental and you're not, it's at an arm's length and you're not physically there, get a building and pest done on your own home before you sell. Address the issues. Wink, wink. Do your best, silicon the rest, if you know what I mean, and just get that problem solved, because you don't want the buyer to see all these issues that really cost you next to nothing, and they're going to take the money off. So if it's a big issue and you address it early, because if it's a leak, they're going to take 50 grand off and it's going to cost you 5.
That's actually brilliant. Not many people do that. Go get your own building and pest inspection.
Yeah.
I find it funny when how you can buy when the agent says, oh, you can get our building and pest inspection, and you pay the $55 and you get it, and it's got all these little things wrong with it. You're like, why the hell didn't you get those fixed? Why are you selling this to people?
Yeah. So it's tax deductible.
Yeah. And in the grand scheme of things, nothing. Like you're going to get your $500 to $1,000 back by fixing those things anyway.
Yeah, such a great idea. Well, I think that's an awesome place to end. You have added a lot of value. Belinda, thank you so much. See that name? You're pumped for it. That's a great name. You gave me your card months ago, and I have it in my wallet, and I was like, I was looking at it, I'm like, add value, such a good name. How do people get more Belinda in their life? How do they get more? How do we learn more and get more Belinda?
Google my name, guys. I pop up on socials. I pop up on, I even asked ChatGPT, who is Australia's most renowned property valuer. I mean, it's my ChatGPT, probably trained it. I pop up. So just Google my name. I'll even pop up, like, I think I'm the only valuer on social media, hence why I get invited to cool things like this. So if you just like the valuer, or Belinda the valuer, or the chick valuer girl from Sydney, I'll pop up. So yeah, there we go. It's nice and simple. It's gotten a bit loose, so yeah.
Like, actually, this might be like, audience, our property investor audience, like, do investors reach out to you, or it's just usually through banks that get, like, at what point
No,
as an
I don't do
investor
bank
would I?
work. No bank work. But
There
bold,
you
because
go.
I don't want to get sued. I actually like my home. I want to live here forever. I don't want to get sued. So no
So at
bank
what
work.
point would I jump on this phone call, like jump on this card and give you a bell outside of inviting you on a podcast?
Okay, as an investor, I do tax depreciation schedules. So every investor needs a tax depreciation schedule. That's what I do. Call me. If you're worried about overcapitalizing and you want to know realistically, Bill, what can I do to my home to add value? And if I do all these things and I spend 40 grand, what will my home be worth at the end? I can give you that advice. Some people, are like, I don't know if I should invest, if I should renovate, if I should sell. I just help them give that advice. And then once they've got that advice, then I'm like, go and see your buyer's agent. Go and see, what you want to do. It's just those people that are confused. And what I do is, as a valuer, my superpower is the trust I have, because I'm unbiased and I'm just going to tell you the facts. And then you go and use a buyer's agent, you're like, you know what, I feel a lot more confident because I know it's the right decision to do. And that's the advisory part, and I add value to what you need, in the space. So
Love that. You've also got a course that you can that you have as well. So if people want to go into that, check that out. Thank you very much for taking the time, Steve Polisi. Thank you so much from Polisi Property for jumping on this podcast. Check out Belinda here. So it's advaluer.com. Again, great domain. Secured the whole thing. Love it. Anything else to finish up on, guys?
Follow her socials. She gives lots of these little nuggets in some cool clips. So yeah, can't stress that enough.
Rock and roll. Thanks, Belinda. Appreciate it.
I do Steve's course over and over again. It was amazing. Chef's kiss.
She actually has done my course. She's not just saying that.
Well, check it out. It's free on YouTube, isn't it?
Points, guys. 10.
10 out of 10. Let's go buy a property, guys. See you later. Have a good one.